All right. Oliver, we're good? All right, fantastic. Call to order. I'll start with the roll call. Eric?
Here.
Ann?
Here.
Jeannie?
Here.
Steve?
Here.
Larry?
Here.
Stacy?
Here.
And then our two student representatives are here as well. Notice of meeting?
The meeting was properly noticed.
All right, I would enjoy a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Next item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. If you would stand with me to say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we'll go right into it. We have a spotlight on learning, but I hear there's a video presentation. Is that correct?
That is true. Lindsay and I will sing and dance for you guys if we have to, but we're more than happy to answer questions. What you're going to see is our teachers and students will introduce themselves. You'll see a group of third graders talking about how they set goals, how they reflect, and how they progress monitor. What they won't talk much about, and it's a big piece of this, is where this all fits into the graduate profile. At least four of the pillars of the grad profile are hit through what the kids will be talking about. The biggest one is a lot of this information will turn into presentations of self, and the students will share those during student-led conferences. And that's a big piece that all of our kids work towards and through during the school year. Those conferences take place in March. So we have that to look forward to. Before we get started with the video, I was talking to some of the fifth grade team. They felt awful that but you guys had to be here on Valentine's Day, so they asked me to wish you a happy Valentine.
Oh, look at that. Way to warm up.
Okay, and with
warm
that,
up
I
the
think we're
audience.
ready to start our video.
You get to open it.
Good evening, everyone, and happy Valentine's Day. I'm Sydney Sprinkle.
I'm Bryn Jakubowski.
And I'm Bridget Halverson. I'm sorry we can't be there in person this evening, but we're still excited to share our important third grade work on goal setting and progress monitoring.
Goal setting helps students to be more aware of their learning. This awareness helps students by being engaged in their learning process and gives students the opportunity to focus on learning standards and their own personal growth.
In Miss Sprinkle's class, this is how we set our reading goals. So first we take a pre-test, and once we get our pre-test back, we look at our lowest grade. And so mine was 2, so I circled the question 2, which was I can determine change in a character. And then we do our learning path, how we're going to work on the question we chose. So I chose stop and drops, write a summary, and reread parts I don't understand. Then we do why did I choose this goal. So I said I can notice character traits and changes because sometimes I have trouble doing that. And then on the back, we usually give evidence that we're doing it, what we said on our learning path. So my stop and drop was I think Annie is checking to see if the magic person is in the treehouse. My summary of something I thought was important was Dink is brave because he wanted to go into a robbed grave. And then my reread, a part I don't understand, was I didn't understand a phrase in Journey Miss Stilton, so I reread it and it all made sense. The last step we do is we reflect on what we did and how well we did and what we think we need to work on. So I might have wrote like something like, I think I still need to work on stopping and jotting, and I think I did pretty well on rereading parts I don't understand.
Giving students ownership of goal setting helps with motivation and engagement. Students are active participants in the learning process. They are able to select goals that are meaningful to them, create a learning path to achieve those goals, and work to find authentic ways to track their progress. In my classroom, we utilize a continuous improvement model to help with our goal setting.
Hi, I'm Addie from Mrs. Jakubowski's third grade classroom, and I'd like to tell you a little bit of how we goal set. This is our plan, do, study, and act form that we fill out. The first one is plan, where we put a goal we'd like to work on. The second one is do. Here are a few different ways I would like to work on my goal. And here are a few examples of ways I've been working on my goal. After I'm done with all of my proof of work I've done, I go to the study box, which is for things I'm really proud of and areas I can maybe grow in. And then the act is for my next goal I'd like to work on in reading.
An important part of the goal setting process is reflection and feedback. Students are able to monitor and reflect on their own work. As teachers, it is crucial to have conversations with students about their goals and provide them individualized, specific feedback to help lift the level of the work they are doing. This ultimately leads to increased student achievement. Here is an example of the value of student reflection paired with individualized, specific feedback from an adult. This student reflected on her pre-assessment data to select the goal of zooming in on the main idea of a nonfiction text. This became our learning sprint work together. As she worked toward this goal, she would meet with me daily to receive feedback. The feedback came from our one-on-one conferring work as well as our small group strategy work that we were doing. The student and I would use the proficiency scales and rubrics to reflect on our progress toward our goal, and I would leave helpful tips that would lead to further growth. You will notice that the work samples she selected at the end of this goal cycle showed the impact of her personal reflection and her ability to use the feedback that she was given. She truly made significant progress toward her personal goal.
Along with goal setting, our classes started progress monitoring, which is usually something that teachers do to help make better decisions about their instruction, form small groups, or provide individualized materials. I felt the value would be greater if my students tracked their own data. The process would not only incorporate our technology standards, create self-awareness, but also would show how their goal setting can directly affect their data.
We've been progress monitoring since the beginning of our school year. We use data like our monthly reading minutes, Dreambox lessons, and STAR scores. We use Google Sheets to make different graphs of our growth.
By monitoring our progress, we can see how we're growing in school by using our monthly data. Then we set goals for the next month, like increasing our reading minutes by 5 or 10 minutes and asking for help more in our Dreambox lessons. These steps will help us grow.
I think progress monitoring is good because sometimes I go up and sometimes I go down. And when I go down, I can learn from those times and make changes to improve.
Studies show student goal setting can build resilience, confidence, and motivation. Goal setting is nothing new for us, but our goal setting continues to grow and change to best meet the needs of our 21st century learners. Our third graders may be young, but their development of these skills will undoubtedly help them be successful in their future.
Setting binders that they're creating. So these are actual student binders. As you peek through, you can see how they're all sectioned off. The beginning is where they've been able to take these home and share their information with parents. So there's some parent comments in the front, and then it goes through different subject areas. So you can kind of see their progress monitoring that they're keeping. You can see their goal setting. There's also some examples of the Think, Do, Study, Act sheet that they were referring to in the video. So go ahead and take a look at some of our student progress and their awesome work that they're sharing with us.
As you dig into it, if you have questions for us, please let us know. answers that they kind of fit what we were looking for, but every one of them have the same way and has a lot of the same information in it. So we felt like any of these examples would be
How long has this method been used?
I think as organized as you're seeing it, I think this is really the first year that we're using it that way. New component of it too is the self-care part. Some of that's near the end when you get to the grad profile pieces, and those pieces just started using
Both PLE and Horizon have set goals as part of their grad profile competencies and indicators to have students self-reflect on goals, to set goals and self-reflect. So yeah, it's been a work in progress for a few years, but yeah, this is very well organized, and I like how they've structured this.
I just want to compliment the teachers and the work you guys are all doing. This is really exemplary best practice. I mean, absolutely exemplary best practice to have students be, I mean, if you think of our personalized learning model, at the center of our personalized learning model is student agency. And that's the point, is we're trying to grow kids as learners, making them independent, giving them the skills that they need to be independent learners. And so whether it be understanding how to use a plan, do, study, act, continuous improvement approach to their own improvement and goal setting, monitoring their progress, measuring data, and then going into those proficiency scales and those rubrics so that they can say with specificity, what is it that I need to improve on? What am I doing really good at? And what do I need to improve on? It's a big difference when students discover that on their own with some guidance versus just being told by an adult. This is where you're weak, this is where you're strong. They can go and they self-evaluate. It has a tremendous impact on motivation. And, you know, I think it's been a big goal of our curriculum and of our instructional practices that students become users of information in this way, whether it's, again, plan, do, study, act, whether it's the design thinking process that we have with students, how they identify a problem, how they iterate a solution, test that solution, look at the feedback, make adjustments. I mean, these are skills. It doesn't matter if you're in social studies, math, science, physical education, whatever you are in as you go on in life, if you have these skills and these approaches, it's going to be tremendously helpful. So, you know, I really applaud you guys and I applaud the teachers for this approach.
Great. It's impressive that kids this age can be that introspective.
Yeah, exactly.
How many in the room are doing plan, do, study, act, continuous improvement models in the 3rd grade?
Zero.
They're nodding over here.
Maybe Khadijah, yeah, maybe you guys were.
This
Saab
almost
and
presents
Khadijah.
itself as another presentation we can make somewhere.
Yeah. It's a great one. That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Pete. Thanks, Lindsay. Excellent.
Yes, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming tonight.
Plastic on that chocolate, yeah.
That might be a post-meeting.
It's not going to get by Larry, probably.
I might be the one to open it.
Boom. It's coming back to you. All right, next item on the agenda is our student representative report. I'll turn it over to you guys.
Khadijah and Masab.
All right, yeah, thank you. So we're excited to share our February student board report. And to start things off, getting used to the clicker. So to start things off, we had an activity that we did during our principal advisory board meeting, and we kind of started off with the meeting reflecting on the fact that this time of year is a little bit hard for students in terms of motivation and, you know, getting started on certain things. So we decided to kind of take some time to reflect on some positive aspects to, you know, start the meeting in a positive light. And we just kind of wanted to highlight some of the things that were shared during that meeting. So, for example, some students shared that they really enjoyed tutoring younger students, or that their final exams went well, or they had some great grades for first semester, or some wins in wrestling. So just that optimism that we were able to share with that meeting is just something that we wanted to kind of start off with this meeting as well. But another thing that we wanted to share as well is the Horizon Student Council. So the past couple years, I think there wasn't a student council, but this year they were able to bring back the program. Miss Berriman, Miss Wright, and Miss Getsky have been really instrumental in bringing that program together. And they really worked to put a selection process together. They wanted 2 representatives per class and kind of ask those reflective questions of students about if they were, how they've already been a leader and how they hope to make an impact on the student council. And so far they've been able to have 2 meetings, and overall just having the student council here is just a great way for students to across no matter the age, just to really develop their leadership skills. So having the opportunity to foster those leadership skills throughout the school district is really great that they have the opportunity. But for their first meeting, one thing that they really worked on was having the students introduced with one another, but working to set up a progressing activity going on during the school. It was a yearbook contest, so they kind of worked together to put that together. Some students working on the flyers and others on the posters. And then their second meeting, they really worked to create some videos for different expectations, like bathroom expectations and cafeteria expectations, because a lot of times those that advice comes when it's heard from a peer. A lot of times it really helps. So the students have really been enjoying it. One student shared that she feels that she can help make her classmates and the school be a better place. So clearly by pushing forward and bringing this program back together, the advisors really have been encouraging leadership, and the students themselves have been really seeing great benefit as well. So that's something we wanted to highlight as well.
All right, so next we wanted to share an event that happened last Friday at the boys basketball game, the Warriors Wear Red event. So this was an event created by a PHS student, Taylor Hoyman, and she'd been working on creating an event to promote inclusion and promote the Special Olympics program that our district has to offer. So through her impact course, which is a non-traditional course that the high school offers, she was able to work over the past 2 years with her teachers and mentors that she was able to connect with to develop this event. What the event was basically, it was not only an event at the basketball game, but it was a spirit week as well. So throughout the week, students in all 4 schools were involved in activities promoting inclusion and promoting the Best Buddies Club and the Special Olympics Club. And in the high school, we had scavenger hunt. In other schools, there were different activities trying to build up to this event. And for this event, they had a relay race at halftime. There was donations all throughout the game, and it was really just a way to promote inclusion and to make those who are a part of our disabled community feel special and feel welcome in our community, feel included. So Taylor was able to meet up with a mentor whose name was Princess Brinkley, and she's been working with her since November of this year. And through her work, Pewaukee School District has become a unified champion school with Special Olympics, and through that they were able to receive the $4,000 in funding for the event and for the Special Olympics team as well. Here we just have a short video which was shown in the high school introducing the event.
Hello everyone, my name is Taylor Hoyman and this is Princess Brinkley, and we are the co-founders of the Warriors Wear Red event. Today you're receiving a flyer for the event that will take place on February 11th at 7 p.m. when your Pewaukee boys basketball team takes on New Berlin West. So what you're going to do is once you see this flyer, you're going to scan the QR code by putting your phone up against it, holding your finger until you see a yellow box in the bottom right-hand corner. You're going to click on that box, open in Safari, and the registration form will automatically pop up. You're going to fill out your basic information, first name, last name. Hello everyone, my name is Taylor Hoyman and this is Princess Brinkley, and we are the co-founders of the Warriors Wear Red event. Today you're receiving a flyer for the event that will take place on February 11th at 7 p.m. when your Pewaukee boys basketball team takes on New Berlin West. So what you're going to do is once you see this flyer, you're going to scan the QR code by putting your phone up against it, holding your finger until you see a yellow box in the bottom right-hand corner. You're going to click on that box, open in Safari, and the registration form will automatically pop up. You're going to fill out your basic information, first name, last name, email, whether you're a student or not, and you're going to fill out your t-shirt size. The first 700 people to fill out the registration in time will get their free t-shirt. So we hope to see you there.
Hello, everyone. My name is Josh Terry.
Hello, my name is Ashton Janowski.
I'm Emmett Lowe.
I'm Colin Osterman.
Hi, my name is Logan Doberstein.
Hi, I'm Zane Farr.
My name is Milan Momcilovic.
Hi, I'm Coach David Burkemper.
And I'm a part of the Pewaukee basketball team. It means a ton to me. One of our pillars for the basketball program is to be a great teammate, and one way to give back to the community is through the Special Olympics program. And growing up, my freshman and sophomore year, we had the opportunity to work with the Special Olympics program, and it was just a joy to work with all the kids.
Special Olympics night means a lot to me and my teammates because it's a time to bring the community together, bring all the other kids who don't always get the same opportunities as other kids to kind of bring them in and make them feel part of something like a team.
I think Special Olympics night is awesome because it sheds a light on kids who maybe don't get the attention of playing varsity sports, and it gives them the recognition that they deserve.
Special Olympics night means to me bringing awareness to the great things that people with special needs are doing athletically within the community.
Best parts of Special Olympics was when all the kids came through the door for practice and they just set their stuff down, grabbed a basketball and just came out and just started shooting around, and just seeing the smiles on their faces, and then just practicing with them the entire time was just super fun. I think it was awesome to be able to build connections with those kids through basketball, through a sport I love.
And then lastly, we just want to end off like we have in the past, discussing the athletic achievements our athletes have had. So in Palms and Dance, our Palms and Dance team were the state runner-up in a hip-hop competition, and we even had our first dancer, Sophia Brusso, be a part of the all-state team for Palms and Dance. Our cheerleading team advanced to the state championships in cheer and dance, and they competed this past weekend at the Dells. In wrestling, our wrestling teams took second place in the Woodland Conference tournament, and we had 6 sectional qualifiers this year, and we even had 2 wrestlers win their section, Andrew Martin and Caleb Cady. And then for basketball, the boys and girls teams are both looking to continue on with their success, and the boys team is trying to go back-to-back for state titles, and the playoffs begin on March 1st for the boys and February 22nd for the girls.
And lastly, we'd like to end off with some salutes. And firstly, we'd like to salute Taylor Hoyman for putting all the work into this impact project. Again, she spent like 2 years working to put this together, so it's a great effort that she put into this. We'd also like to salute Mrs. Thoma's English students. Her 11 creative writing students were actually published in the Anthology of Poetry of Young Americans. And then Zara Dundia, who is my younger sister, she actually got a Scholastic Silver Key, and she's also one of Mrs. Thoma's English students. And lastly, we'd like to honor the FBLA, Future Business Leaders of America. They had a successful regional competition in which 20 students medaled and 18 students qualified for state, which was the greatest percentage of medalers and qualifiers for state within the Region 7. So.
And Khadijah, am I correct that you were one of those that qualified for state?
Yeah.
I thought so.
Congratulations. That's great.
It's great.
That's great, and congratulations to you.
Thank
too.
you.
Any questions for our students? Thanks again, great report.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Really, I think really, I just want to comment, excellent report. I think you guys are really finding your rhythm with this, that they get better every time. So nice job, well done.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to the next item. We've got some changes about to consider here for the COVID mitigation plan. I'll turn it over to Mike.
Yeah, thank you. So a lot of very positive news in terms of the direction of things. Julie, are you able to pull up the mitigation plan? Thank you. And I'll just maybe have you scroll at different spots. So this is, I think, the 4th iteration of the PSD COVID mitigation plan. I also provided you with draft data today in terms of where we are, and we're continuing a 4 or 5 week trend of substantial decline in cases and viral spread, and there's plenty of predictions and expectations that this is a trend that may reasonably be expected to continue. We had sent out a letter to all families recently that contact tracing as a practice was going away. We were following the lead of the public health organizations, for a variety of reasons that we explain in the letter, that are stepping away from universal disease investigation and contact tracing for COVID-19. Among the reasons are substantial immunity through prior infection and vaccination that exist, the much faster incubation period of Omicron, so really the inability to frankly get to most of the cases, and the, the increase of home testing, the milder disease, less people getting tested. So those things really are what public health has explained as rationale for not engaging their resources in contact tracing, and then us, along with most schools in the county, also stepped away from that as not a very productive strategy. And again, as we're seeing cases drop pretty dramatically, I think the goal all along is to get to a place where there's less of a burden on people of having to deal with protocols that aren't as necessary. So this plan really speaks to that, and tries to simplify what was, at times kind of a complicated, involved a plan, while still maintaining some core practices that are prudent. In the current status, we still do have high spread as it's coming down from the very record high levels that we had in Omicron. When I looked today, the case rate within the boundaries of the district, I think we were at about 148, I think was the number maybe Danielle, you and I looked at today, per 100,000, where I think we were north of 900 not too long ago. If you get under 100, then you drop a level, which we saw at the beginning of the year, and haven't seen since in terms of that particular metric, but the trend is that we will continue to drop. I shared current data. Currently, we have 5 active cases in the entire district. 2 of the schools have 0 cases right now. So very low disease activity in terms of COVID-19 in the school system. We are at very low yellow in the color-based model that we have, like by 0.7 away from green, and I'm guessing we'd probably be in green by tomorrow, potentially, depending on what tomorrow's number is. So cases have dropped substantially. Immunity has increased substantially. To kind of put it in perspective in terms of infections, shared with us by Waukesha County Health, that in Waukesha County there was north of 27,000 reported cases in Waukesha County. In all of 2021, there was 33,000 cases in the entire year. So you nearly had the number of cases in January that you had in the prior year. So what does that mean? Well, that means a lot of people were exposed, and that number is hardly the total. I think the biggest month in terms of infection prior was December of 2021, which was about 6,600. So we certainly saw those things rocket up. They call it an ice pick curve because it goes up really steep and it comes down really fast. So the benefit to that is that increased immunity. So as you start to look at early stages of, for lack of a better term, exit planning from some of the emergency practices that have been in place, and maybe it's premature to be using that kind of language. However, I think it is about the approach that we've always taken as we look at the situation and we try to evolve and respond to that. Our goal is to have in place what is necessary, but to not have things that aren't necessary or productive in place. So several things in terms of this plan. So the plan is really organized around 3 tables. The first is really what we've continuously published, and that is what is the quarantine and isolation process. So all year we have not been quarantining school-based contacts, and now we are no longer contact tracing school-based contacts. So isolation and quarantine is now specifically limited to 3 groups. People that are positive, people that are probable, which means they have a known exposure and have symptoms, and people who have a household contact because of greater risk in terms of a transmission with a household exposure. So those are the, outside of that, no one is subject to the isolation and quarantine, and then this gets into the details in terms of how that's managed. The second, if you want to scroll, Julie, to table 2. Keep going a little bit. Table 2, if you just want to hold there. So table 2 is what's been in the plan with some modification. You'll see some highlighted parts of yellow that speak to some changes. This is the what we've had in the operational plan all year, where we take kind of all of the areas of recommendation from the CDC for school operations. We list kind of what those recommendations are from CDC, and then on the right-hand column, we list what it is that we're doing or what our strategy or approach is as a school district. So this continues, whether it's ventilation, whether it's sanitation, all of those components. It just speaks to what our status is. And then if you want to scroll a little bit, Julie. I certainly don't expect people to really be able to read this really well. I'm just kind of walking you through. Keep going. So you see where there's some highlights. Can you go back up? Just go back up to the highlighted. All right, so these highlights, you know, in terms of as you're thinking about approving the plan, these highlights are just formalizing what we've already communicated. Again, looking for your approval regarding no longer contact tracing, and then this speaks to the communication. So while we won't be contact tracing school exposures, we won't be getting those lists of students that the nurses then have to follow up with and call, which is frankly a massive burden off of their shoulders that they've been dealing with for 2 years, as well as the teachers who get these automated surveys that they have to fill out whenever there's an exposure in their classroom. Instead, we are looking at more generalized approaches. So in elementary classrooms, if there's 2 or more cases in a classroom, parents would get a letter notifying them that there's been positive cases in their child's classroom. As you go up to you know, the middle school, if there's 15% of the students in a house or at a grade level that have positive cases, we would do some additional communication there. And certainly the high school is, in essence, if we were at 15% for the building, we would do some additional communication there. The other piece that's there is for individuals that have specific concerns regarding being medically fragile or immunocompromised. Our nursing staff is working with those parents and those families so that they get a higher level of communication, so they have kind of a list to check if a positive case comes in, to give them a phone call, and so there's a higher level of communication for that select group that have more specific health concerns, so that they are aware. So, and anybody who's interested in that level of communication has been invited to contact their school's health office. Can you scroll up now, Julie? Just keep scrolling down further, please, till the next highlight. Yeah, that should be highlighted. Okay, if you want to stop right there. So another piece is, and no one's happier right now than Christine Barr, because we are recommending full reactivation of our volunteer program. As you know, we've had really substantial and robust volunteer programming in the past with math mentors and expert listeners, not to mention our own student volunteer program. So Christine's begun to reach out, and so we actually train the expert listeners and the math mentors to start that process moving forward. So this recommendation includes full reactivation of our PSD volunteer program, so those individuals could come in and begin working with students. If you want to scroll, Julie. And then this one. You want to stop there? So one of my recommendations tonight is that tomorrow be the last edition of what we've all come to know as the Tuesday COVID Weekly Update. We've done a couple of things. We have established, and it's been published now for 2 weeks, a real-time daily dashboard that people can go right to our website and click on. We've also published it in multiple publications, where every day at about 10 a.m. in the morning it's updated with that day's cases and incidents of quarantine in each school. So that is live real-time information, so no longer does anyone need to wait till me to send out the data on Tuesday. They can go access it for themselves. In addition, we would be encouraging families, if they want to look at community transmission, it's very accessible on the Wisconsin DHS site. They don't need a weekly message from me to necessarily talk about community transmission. They can access that for themselves. If it's something that folks want to monitor, what we would do is, if there was any kind of substantial change or additional information that needed to be communicated, we would do that then on an as-needed basis versus a weekly communication. So that piece would be a change in terms of changing our communication strategy to one that people can access as needed and monitor using that dashboard, which I think is a nice improvement. And if you want to scroll up, Julie, then to, I think it's table 3, and if you want to stop there. The other piece is really simplifying, but yet being transparent with some level of mitigation, color coding system. I think what's key with this is that we've went from a 5-color table just to a simple 3-color table using similar metrics. Again, it's that 7-day case average that we've been using. And what this does is say that this is where we may consider, if we're in green, further reduction in mitigation. If we sustain there, if we have sustained surges in cases, something happens and we go the other direction. It gives really just benchmarks at which those considerations are more likely to take place. There's a list of enhanced mitigation measures that we've all heard before: test to stay, temporary required masking, for example. We did that with our staff in January for a couple of weeks during the surge because we felt that was necessary to try to keep our staff in place as much as possible so we could maintain operations. We could bring back some level of contact tracing. So those things are there as strategies that we could go to if necessary, but felt it was important to really simplify this. I felt that the table that was in place that we kind of kept amending and adjusting and adding to was confusing. And then as we'd go up levels, if we weren't necessarily implementing those things that were a may do, people would ask questions as why aren't these things necessarily changing. So we list what we could do as things increase, which is what we've done. We use those things strategically if we were to ever need to go back to some of that. Our approach has been, and in my mind would continue to be, do those things to affect as few people for as short of a time as possible if we need to kind of ride out some kind of surge or wave. But I'm very hopeful and optimistic that we're headed into a really good stretch here, and that we're going to be able to continue to move more and more towards regular kinds of operations, getting to where we deal with illness like we always did, getting back to a point at some point, I would hope before too long, to where if you're sick, you stay home, and if you're symptom free for 24 hours and those kinds of things, then that's what we typically do coming back to school. So we're not there yet because those protocols, isolation and quarantine, are at 5 days, which is a dramatic improvement from where we started at 14 down to 10 down to 5. So that's currently in place right now. But as things improve, we would continue to look to reduce the burden and the impact of those kinds of protocols. So I think this has really been a very consistent approach that we've taken, which is respond as needed, and then when we have the opportunity to remove some of these pieces, then we go ahead and do that. So the plan here is to really simplify and adjust based on the current circumstances. And so those are my recommendations. I'd be happy to take any questions that you have.
Anybody start with questions? Stacy, you good?
I'm good. I appreciated the changes.
Eric? Ann?
I'm good. I'm good.
I'll just say we met earlier in our business affairs committee with Liz from the nursing team, and I didn't fully appreciate one of the things that she shared with me that really was good learning in that session was the fact that with the Omicron and the rate of transmissibility of that variant, that the contact tracing really wasn't necessary anymore because people who were in contact got it And so they, it wasn't necessary to tell someone that your kid might have been exposed, because either they got it or they didn't. By the time you contacted them, they knew whether they had it or they weren't going to have it, because it's that transmissible. So I appreciate better the context behind that change. I think it's really, it's reality, right? Let's adjust to the reality of what we're dealing with. And I appreciate the changes you put in here, because it's very reality based. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Larry, you good?
I'm good, thanks.
Well, let's make a motion, somebody, to accept these changes to the response plan.
I move to approve the updated Pewaukee School District COVID-19 operational plan as presented.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you. And so,
And great job. by the way. Great job.
You really.
thank you. Thank you. All right, Julie, we can jump over to the ESSER piece, and then I'll kind of preview it and then turn it over to John a little bit. So John's come to you multiple times on this before. So we have ESSER 1, 2, 3, right? So we have these federal funds. We are required to have and as we should, a funding and a budget plan for how those funds are going to be allocated. We've talked about things like evidence-based instructional strategies, EBIS, that these funds be allocated toward. So we've spent a lot of time, John in particular, on creating a plan in terms of how we want to deploy that funding over the next couple of years. And one of the pieces that is required by but through this federal grant and by DPI is that we have a feedback process as well. So in essence, we need to present information as to how we intend to strategically utilize these resources for operations. And then you'll see there's a very simple survey instrument that can be accessed by anyone in the community. And we'd have that open following this meeting and through the end of the month if there was feedback in relation to the decisions that were made. So I just wanted to kind of set the table for that and turn it over to John.
Thanks, Mike. Like Mike mentioned, you've seen a lot of this information. I believe this is the third time that we're presenting it to the board and the community through this venue. And as we look at the ESSER funding, this presentation is really focusing on that third bucket, that third tier of funding that the district is anticipating receiving. With the SR3 funding, we've had two main focal points that we've talked about. One of them, and it should be first and foremost, is that student-centered approach, where the funds are going to be utilized to cover the cost of some of the most direct services we provide to those students who are in need based on the pandemic and the virtual working on our intervention with our interventionist cost and those strategies to bring those students and accelerate their learning back to where it would have been. One of the last criteria under the regulations is this second bullet on here, is that providing funding to address immediate costs associated with opening, maintaining schools, and most importantly here, maintaining the learning environment. When we looked at this last biennial budget, the per pupil increase of 0 to the revenue limit was in direct response to the availability of these funds to be able to cover operational costs. So we're balancing those two items in the plan of how this will be spent as we go forward. So as we look at the planning, on this, the funding that we received through the federal government and through ESSER3 is designed to cover 3 fiscal years. We'll see this in the 21-22 fiscal year, the one that we're in right now, in 22-23, and in 23-24. The last time that we talked, we had some uncertainty around the funding on ESSER3. I'm going to touch on that in the next slide, but I want to just give the context around ESSER3 covers through September of 2024 the cost that you could have to address through here. So the first part of ESSER3 is what we know right now. The title allocation. This is 90% of the funding that comes from the federal government is tied to this first tier with us. We have a very small title population, so our funding is very low, about $140-ish per student. The key element here is that 20% of this funds, the last bullet on the right, 20% of this is tied to being those EBIS strategies, those evidence-based intervention strategies being used to cover them. This is available from March of 2021, again through September of 2024. Then the last time we met, you'll notice that the total projected here under the supplemental grant is increased by just under 10%, about 230,000, just over 10%, about $230,000 for us. The compromise bill that we're waiting on, or the compromise proposal that is at the Department of Ed right now, would raise this to about $850 per pupil, where the last time we met, the total from SR3 was going to be around $700 per pupil. So that's where we see that increase in funding that we would anticipate. Still waiting on the final regulations on how this fits with the EBIS. So initially, 100% of this pot of money was going to be tied to EBIS. Under the proposal that's there right now, a portion of it, about 50% of it, is tied to EBIS. Oh. The balance of it follows more of the regulations of SR2, where it's unrestricted. You can use it for operating cost to cover the cost of operations. That's why it's a balance between these as we look at the 3 years. Again, the available funding, the plan, will be used to tie to those EBIS strategies. Also look, as we move into the next fiscal year, into some of those coaching positions that we have, where they're, now the first tier is focused directly on students. The second is raising the bar for our staff through our coaches to better serve the needs of all the students that are in the classroom to raise them up. So teaching those strategies and implementing those strategies through the use of our coaches opens the funding up to be able to cover the costs that they have. We went through this slide in December when we met, where we talked about what are some of those strategies that we utilize in the district, both for math and for reading. So these are the ones that we would identify as we get into the application process. So the application process has us identify the staff member that's going to be delivering the service, and then what are those strategies that they're implementing as part of that to tie it to the EBIS criteria. And then finally, we have the link that will be placed in here. The plan is to post this on our COVID webpage. And one of the elements, as Mike had mentioned, of the SR3 funding is what we've done now 3 times here. Made the presentation, allowed for feedback. We'll do the same thing with staff members. We'll have this available for community to be able to put this on our webpage to be able to provide simple 3-question survey. Plan is around EBIS and funding staff positions as we go into the next 2 years after this year and the next 3 total years. And it asks the question on a scale of 1 to 5, I believe it is where we settled. How do you feel about the plan? Supportive through the scale. And then secondly, an open question for feedback. So we'll monitor that. We're going to keep that open for 2 weeks to get feedback. We'll use that as part of our submittal for the budget plan for this. That is, at least for the first phase of it, due by March 11th. So we wanted to get as close to knowing how much we're going to get before we built that budget plan out and finalize this communication piece with it. So, any questions?
John, if we're going to be using this money for the next couple of years for more coaches and interventionists, what happens in 2 to 3 years when we don't have this money anymore?
Thank you. The cliff, right? Yeah.
Commonly been referred to as that fiscal cliff
Yes.
that exists after the federal money goes away. And we're strategically looking at this as we build the budget. You will see as we bring forward the budget for next year, very limited growth in positions, very strategic about how we control our cost moving forward so that we can prepare ourselves. You know, it is a new biennium. There'll be a new biennial budget that comes through, and at that point, we've identified the need for additional funding. The sources are there. It'll be up to the legislature about how to soften that fiscal cliff when we get to that 23-24 fiscal year.
And then my second question is, this is the one I've asked before, and you broke it down before, but is SR3 now, is this all under the cap, or is this above and beyond our cap, basically?
So our revenue limit is the total of equalization aid and taxes, And the revenue limit typically will increase by an increment. That's the inflationary increase that you get. Our limit last year was $10,805. This year it's $10,805. Next year it's $10,805. Funding from a federal source is outside of equalization aid. It's outside of taxes. So yes, it's covering the same costs, but instead of having it funded through equalization aid and property taxes, it's funded by the federal source.
Okay, the fact that we didn't get, that the state legislature didn't up anything by, they upped it by 0 this year kind of threw me off.
Right.
Well, and that's the concern with the fiscal cliff, because this is one-time funding, and typically that limit goes up with an inflationary increase year over year, and it builds. So that's the concern a couple of years down the road in terms of how they're going to address that.
Other questions? I have one on the EBIS services. I may be reviewing this incorrectly, but it seems a lot focused on the younger grades, something like the Sunday and the Orton Gillingham. Isn't that for the younger grades?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, in general, intervention, the younger you focus, generally, you know, the better the results. You know, they always talk about first grade sort of being that key year, that if we can intervene with students and have them back to grade level by first grade, there's a much greater level of success. So we do put, you know, sometimes more services in towards the younger grades, but some things like Sunday system, that's for all students with special needs.
Okay.
You know, and a lot of the intervention strategies can be used really with students at any grade level. It's really based on where their levels, reading levels are at or math levels are at. So we use advanced math recovery, even though you'll typically hear about it being for elementary, we use that all the way here through the high school if we have a student whose math needs are not at grade level.
Okay.
And those like LLI resources go all the way up to the high school as well for literacy. So,
Thank you. We don't need a motion on this at all, do we? No. Yep. Okay, I didn't think so. All right, thank you, John. Well, I just assume any other questions? Okay. I didn't want to rush that. Next item on the agenda is, comments from citizens. Julie, did you get any cards? Okay. I lost my place. Salutes and recognitions. I'm going to just look at Larry because he told me beforehand he had something to give.
Yes, and I apologize that this might take me a little bit. Can everybody hear me out there? Okay, in terms of going forward with it. So anyway, tonight I will want to kind of recognize and acknowledge a number of people for a number of things. So in November of 2018, the community entrusted us with the largest referendum in the history of the Pewaukee School District. This trust is taken very seriously, and it is our responsibility as a board to ensure that those funds are carefully invested in the school facilities in order to provide the best education opportunities for our students, i.e. open the door to each child's future. My first salute tonight goes to Steve Dankert, Ann Wright, and Stacy Newcomer for their oversight and guidance on the overall financial aspects of the project. Great work, your group. My second salute goes to John Gahan, John Stangler, and the people from the Bray Architects and C.G. Schmidt construction folks for their excellent work in creating the facilities that we are sitting in tonight. And John, you have earned a unique statewide reputation as having a very sharp pencil and an analytical mind that really helped the district save a lot of money. So thank you very, very much for that, John, as well. My third salute tonight goes to Danielle Bosanic and Miranda Kozlik, Robin Wilson, and of course all of the principals and staff who literally help fill the classrooms with either the teaching and learning materials or their presence on a daily basis to provide that truly immersive and experiential learning environment for all of our students here at the Pewaukee School District. And finally, this is not really a salute as much as it is a recognition. I want to thank the citizens of the Pewaukee School District for their trust and support in allowing the Pewaukee School District to again fulfill the mission of opening the door to each child's future. The district was able to complete the project and now put in, and I will let Steve put in the amount later on, but we will be putting money into a debt service fund to reduce future debt service for the community. So my salutes are out there, so thank all of you for your contributions to the Pewaukee School District. And Steve, we can insert that number in after the, Steve does his thing tonight. I don't want to take his thunder from him, so. That is my end of my salutes.
Very well done, Larry. Thank you very much.
Well done, Larry.
Yes,
That was
very-
excellent.
Very good.
Yeah, very thoughtful.
So who wants to follow up on that one? Ann?
I'd like to salute two other athletes, PHS athletes, Andrew Eckhoff, who is going to state in diving, and Gavin Bowen, who is going to state in the 200 medley relay and the 200 free relay. And so they'll be competing this Saturday.
Excellent.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Ann, for
Thanks,
including
Ann.
that.
Anyone else?
Yeah, oh, sorry, Steve.
No, please go ahead.
Khadijah, could you list the names of the teachers at Horizon that brought back the student council? I think, I didn't realize the student council had gone away for a little while, so I just wanted to salute them for bringing it back.
Would you like me to say them right now, or?
Julie has them, right?
Okay.
Julie, do you have it, or do you want Khadijah to say it? It was in her presentation. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Steve?
I would just like to recognize the business team in the administrative office for dealing with a yes, you have a new employee, no, you don't situation that happened over there in the last month where they had brought somebody new onto the team who then departed immediately upon getting trained, and the team had to cover an extra long gap of services over there. So big thanks to them for dealing with that extended staff shortage.
And we've had David showed up for more than a week now, so you're on a roll. You're on a roll. He keeps every day. I'm like, he came back.
Wow. Anybody else? Before I turn it over to the administrators. Administrators, any salutes?
I'd like to salute John Stangler, who was recognized today. John and I went up to the Wisconsin Dells, his organization, WISCA, which is the School Safety Officers organization. So John Stangler is recognized as the School Safety Coordinator of the Year for the state of Wisconsin and was recognized in the Dells today. So as we know, safety, everything starts there. If this isn't a safe and secure location for visitors, for students, for staff, then it's kind of hard to get anything else done. So he does a really good job, and he was certainly very complimentary to the district and the other members of his team, but nice recognition for John.
Anyone else?
Did I steal that for you? Did I
Still
jump
yours?
on?
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that.
And John Gann did a nice job of speaking on his behalf today with no notice. So
Yeah.
I was glad they put him on the spot, not me.
All right. Well, that brings us down to the consent agenda where we have minutes from previous meetings, some correspondence. There are a couple of gifts for us to recognize for robotics, and then we have policies from last time. You can see the list there. Unless there's any corrections or questions, I'd accept a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 7-0. All right, going back to Steve now. Business Affairs Committee report.
Yeah, so we met earlier, and as I mentioned, a little preview earlier, we had Liz, Grandma Liz, she proudly announced herself to our room. Grandma Liz give us an update on nursing services and really showed the value of that team and the work that they've done over the last couple of years with all the data and the metrics that they compile around nursing services that have been delivered and all the supports that they provide to students and on a daily basis, even in the world without COVID, and then even further with all of the COVID-related services that they provide. And we did have some conversation about some of the changes. She was very complimentary, Mike, of the dialogue back and forth and the strategy changes as we've evolved around the COVID response strategies. So she was very supportive of your approach to all of that and thought it was very well thought out. So I wanted to pass those comments along. We then got into our normal conversations around check registers and the financial report. We learned about freezing pipes from cold weather. We did have a cold snap, which caused some challenges recently, not just for you and your personal lives, but also here at the school. And we also talked about tomorrow being a big day with 20% of the revenue coming in via the city and village Pewaukee tax payments tomorrow. And then another big event this week, Wednesday and Thursday, the kickoff of budget development for the upcoming school year that John and his team lead with all of the school leadership and department leaders in the district. So those are a couple of big upcoming events that we shared. So that was our report from today.
Motion to accept the business affairs report?
So moved.
Second.
Julie, did you get who said what? Okay.
So other than, is it tomorrow is Taco Tuesday, John? So you're gonna take out the group to Taco Tuesday and
He's
celebrate
more
the
Moe's
cash
Monday.
coming in?
He likes to go.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you for that. Thank you, Steve. New business. So the very first item, you probably, a number of us have seen quite a few times. It's a wonderful opportunity for our children. Wisconsin Adventure Trip, what? And the National Adventure Trip, NAT. So, Mike, do you want to just briefly talk about it?
I'd take any questions you have. These are long-standing field trips. And in fact, they have the distinction of being the first field trips that were brought back since the start of the pandemic when we did those last summer. So Aaron Yeskis and Andy Douglas have been doing this for a long time, I think since I was AP at the high school, and it's just a great opportunity for kids. They have another exciting couple of trips planned, so we would take questions, but in essence I would seek your approval for these two trips.
Move to approve the Wisconsin Adventure Trip from June 13th to 17th, 2022, and the National Adventure Trip, Sleeping Bear Dunes, National Lakeshore, in and around Leland, Michigan, from July 16th through July 23rd as presented.
I'll second that one.
I would like to go.
Yeah, I always offer.
Please
to be
let
a
the minutes
chaperone.
show
I've never
Steve
seen me-
Dankert has volunteered to chaperone.
Yeah.
All right. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 7-0. Okay, and then we have FBLA.
Yeah, you heard, now this is, don't feel any extra pressure since one of the participants in the state FBLA is sitting here at the table. But as we heard in the report earlier, our FBLA has qualified a number of students for state, and that explains why this is within the 90-day window, because it's following a qualification. But because it is multiple nights, it goes to the level of board approval. So in support of FBLA's attendance at the state conference, we would seek your recommendation and approval for FBLA's field trip.
First of all, any questions about it?
Kind of overlaps spring break, doesn't it? A little bit. Sorry.
That's dedication right
That is
there.
dedication.
So we'd like to make a motion.
I will.
Okay, Larry.
So move to approve the Future Business Leaders of America State Conference Field Trip Request from March 27th to the 29th, 2022, as presented.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 7-0. Thank you. Well, good luck.
Have fun.
Have fun, yeah. Next item is the second Friday count in January.
So the report is included within your packet. The district does two official count dates during the school year, the third Friday in September, which is the primary driver of our revenue limit and our funding level for the year. So a lot of importance on that count date. The second date is the second Friday in January. This count date sets the 1/2 of the calculation for our equalization aid that will be certified in October of 2022. So not as impactful when it comes to the level of funding we have in an annual budget, but still an important count date to assess where we're at. It's been an indicator for us for several years, pretty close indicator of what would happen in the fall when it comes to our enrollment. It's at that midway point. And I'm happy to report that we have seen an increase of just under 1% in our resident FTE from September of 2021 to January of 22. So as we look at building the budget for next year, building it on 1 to 1.5% growth in student population. This is a positive trend towards meeting that as we measure from third Friday to third Friday. Nothing really jumped out on the enrollment. So usually our enrollment growth is from residential turnover. When you get into the late fall and into the winter, there's not as many new homes being occupied. I think this is a combination of both. We had out of the increase of 29, second grade went up 7 students. We've had years in the past, we had the strongest growth in one grade level. I believe one year we had growth of almost 25 students in 4th grade between May 1st and July 1st. So abnormal that we would see that. It's usually spread pretty evenly across the grades. So we're seeing that spread across the grades now again. Open enrollment did not change. We added 3 new students coming in, and we had 3 fewer kids going out. So part of the swing there. And then finally, the additional year tuition waivers are important because at our January meeting, as the board set seats for open enrollment, you do that based on who's occupying a seat when the count is determined at the end of December. Those tuition waiver students can attend by policy through open enrollment next year. A tuition waiver student is somebody who was a resident of the district who moved out of the district and is allowed to continue until they get a chance to go through open enrollment. They do not need to have a seat available for them in open enrollment in order to be able to continue in the district next fall. So we have 6 students right now that fit that profile, which is pretty normal for this time of year.
So all good news.
It's good news. It's a positive trend. It's heading in the right direction as we look at building the budget for the fall. Again, we always optimal for the revenue limit situation is slow, sustained growth at 1.5–2% growth per year, where you're not driving a substantial number of costs that increase, but you're having sustained revenue growth to keep up with your inflationary pressures.
Any questions?
Yeah, John, I have a couple questions on that, and it's just, I know that you probably have the statistics somewhere, and I should have probably gotten the question to you in advance. But do we have any, of the students that are coming in, are any of those students that are coming in through the new, like, residential homes in the Swan Farms, or like new move-ins, or is it people that are in existing houses, turnover from that standpoint?
It's a combination. I can give you the anecdotal information on that. I get calls from the bus company all the time that the construction company is parking on both sides of the road and they can't get a bus through. They're going to pick the kids up in there. So, yes, we are getting growth from the new construction. We also are seeing it from residential turnover.
Because I think, I mean, in the projections, which we don't necessarily know, but I mean, as more and more of those homes open up, I mean, potentially we're gonna see that continued growth coming out of there possibly, but like in my subdivision, the lots are filled. I mean, there's no more space there, so, for the most part, so.
Yeah, and we have just received, and we'll talk about it at a future business affairs meeting, we'll talk about the enrollment projection report. So that just recently came in as we start looking at what has been the impact of the pandemic and how do we factor that into the projections for future growth. Then also weighing what we see for occupancy in the new homes. And that will range anywhere from 0.6 students per household. We've experienced as high as, in some subdivisions, 1.4 students per household that come in. So we'll try to gauge that as we look forward.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you, John. Next item on the agenda is the school calendar for 23-24. We had brought this back because there's some question about how we listed a vacation day.
Yeah, you have the information. I mean, it was brought up at the last meeting, Jeannie. You had a question from a community member. Good Friday was a term that was used on the calendar. Actually, historically, it has not been used on the public family calendar. It's a component of the work calendar as 12-month employees. Good Friday as a date has been a paid holiday for 12-month employees. There was a format change to the calendar, and referencing that was pulled onto the calendar. It is the only reference to a religious holiday on that calendar, which was the issue that this board had some discussion about last time. So that was one piece that brought this back in terms of how you would like to proceed with that. Beyond that, it is a very typical 23-24 school year calendar. as described, meets all the requirements in terms of instructional hours and for students and work days for staff. The features of the calendar in terms of spring break, for a number of years now, we've worked to align our spring break with area Waukesha County school districts, which is beneficial for a number of reasons. But I'd be happy to take any questions. Otherwise, we would seek a motion to approve the 23-24 school year calendar.
Are there any questions? No. Okay, well, you know what we need.
I move to approve the 2023-24 school year calendar as amended and presented.
Second.
All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Looks like we're going back to John for the closeout on the construction.
So Larry had given a good overview of what that project entailed and how we went through that. A couple of data points that I'd like to just share with you as we go through this. On the revenue side of the project, with the reinvestment of the funds, with rebates, we were very aggressive on getting rebates through Focus on Energy and wherever we could for some improvements that were included in there. We generated just short of $41 million of total revenue, so 39.7 from the bond proceeds. We had projected higher for interest earnings, but when COVID happened, interest rates really turned. So we came in slightly under on that, but we were able to get more in rebates and then some gifts. We had community organizations that supported some of the projects that we completed last summer off of the Long Range Capital Projects Plan to total that. In all the campus improvements themselves, so outside of the physical footprint of the buildings, one of the big goals was improve the traffic patterns and improve the parking, improve the access to the campus, and that the safety of the campus as a whole. We spent about $7.2 million on improvements to the campus and the infrastructure on the outside of the campus. Pewaukee Lake Elementary was about $9.1 million that was utilized, and giving the upgrade to that facility, that 25-year-old facility, from a functionality standpoint, to be able to deliver instruction in a modern environment, incorporate some of those things like you talked about earlier with the STEAM and the maker spaces. Horizon Elementary had a new gym, came to about $2.6 million in that building, along with mechanical upgrades that were completed within there in building infrastructure to improve the efficiency of the building. Asa Clark was about $13.5 million. That was the largest component for the 6th grade wing addition and the STEAM makerspace. And Pewaukee High School is about $7.6 million. The space we're in here, the new offices, the upgrades throughout the building. We had some small costs that were in there. While the interest earnings were high, we earned more interest than we were allowed to, so we had a little bit of arbitrage rebate that had to be processed through, and that compiled the total of the costs. So if you compare that to the revenues, we have about $698,000 that will be transferred over to the debt service fund. As we close this out, Fund 39, you'll see that as a revenue in there. That money will be utilized for future debt service payments. It's restricted to being used just for those debt service payments. So we're gonna meet the intent with that as we go forward. Any questions?
I mean, just on that part of it, I mean, again, that amount is in there, and that goes into that debt service fund to offset any future tax levies as a result of the savings that were created with the project, right?
Right.
So, and that's automatic. I mean, it has to go there.
When we close, yes. Yep.
Okay. And there's no, is there a motion required on this or not? No.
No, it's just a report.
Yep.
I have to say that the project itself went really smooth, even with COVID. Summer of 19 went as planned. We were hit our benchmarks of getting all of the exterior work done and having asphalt back on the drive for buses to come through on the first day of school. It was Sunday night, but we had it ready to go. And then the next big benchmark that we hit was when we started to work inside. Do you remember we put a wall right across that hallway over there to start working on some construction and demo here? And right after all of that was completed, then COVID gave us another opportunity where we were able to really flood some resources in here and get work done in areas where we weren't going to be able to get into until the summer. So gain some efficiencies that way, along with the challenges of having enough workforce available and shutdowns on certain aspects of the project throughout that. But all through it, Bray Architects and C.G. Schmidt, they were great partners. We knew going in that we had a strong team that was going to work together on this, and they proved it all the way through. It was a lot of success in the project, and it was driven by that team approach and how everybody was able to be agile and to achieve the goals that we had going into the project.
I think one of my favorite memories was the day we all came in here for the teacher breakfasts, and there was stuff everywhere, and I just saw all those teachers just working together to get their classrooms ready. I mean, that was just a great example of the teamwork amongst the staff here to work together and help each other out with moving furniture around under those last minute stressors to have the doors ready to open.
Danielle's laughing and looking at me because I came in about 3 days before the teachers arrived and called one of our friends at CG and said, all right, Mark, I'm trying to not come unglued right now. I have hundreds of staff coming on Monday, and I'm wondering how this is going to be in condition for them to be back. They showed up with the team. I don't know, we were all vacuuming and moving stuff.
I just have a vision of Tony Stranke, like literally running with desks like on his back down this hallway and around the corner to those new classrooms, like to get desks delivered to the right rooms. So.
But it got done, and it went extremely well. And John is exactly the guy you want leading this. First of all, I think he secretly really likes this kind of work. His sharpen your pencil mentality, which I think will be his new, someday when he decides not to do this, he'll just start a new business called Sharpen Your Pencil.
Tombstone.
Yeah. But no, I mean, and the partners were fantastic, always looking at efficiencies and to be able to get the scope of work that was done, make the impact that happened, and be able to return, substantial funds to debt service, I think is a real big success. So.
Just have one other comment with this, and it's just one of those things, sometimes you don't think about this, but obviously COVID kind of shut down a lot of activities around the area in the state. But when we held our open house here and talking with like the folks from C.G. Schmidt and the people that were there, I mean, if you work in this kind of work with construction and building, they want to work. I mean, they want to work, they like to work, they need to work kind of thing. So I'm always grateful and thankful that we were able to continue that project and be able to provide those opportunities for those people. Otherwise, I mean, yes, they probably could take some time off, but time off, no paychecks, all those things are not necessarily great. And I think truly in their heart of hearts, they liked to work here because of the dedication and commitment, and they saw what we were doing with the classroom spaces, with the things that were occurring here, that they really felt positive about their experience in working with the Pewaukee School District to create new learning spaces for our students. So, and again, that was a lot of folks were saying that in terms of when we walked around during the open house. So,
and now I'm going to open this up. I was waiting for that event.
Celebrate. Okay, there you go.
Celebrate with some chocolate, Steve.
But John, aren't you glad you got it all done before all these supply chain issues popped up?
Oh,
yes.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
There were still plenty of those conversations.
Not as
That
bad
would've
as they
been
are right
really
now,
ugly,
though. It's like,
yeah.
wow.
All right, are there any more questions for John about the closeout?
no, we're good.
Khadijah has one.
Khadijah?
I just wanted to make a comment. Just as a student, like watching the building transform has been really, exciting. And I have to say that the spaces that we have now, like we depend on them so much. So we're all really grateful for the construction, and it's just, again, from the student perspective, it's just been amazing to watch everything transform.
Thank
you, Khadijah. This space in general is just used
Yeah.
all the time. Yeah.
Well, going down to personnel issues, there is a resignation at this time. Amy Idy, I think?
Yeah, Amy Idy, elementary teacher who's been an outstanding teacher for us 9 or 10 years, 9 years. I know my son had her in second grade. But getting married, and her soon-to-be husband is a farmer in Edgerton, I want to say.
Yes.
I'm okay, Larry. Thank you. So, with regret, because we hate to see Amy go, I seek your approval of her resignation she'll finish the year, of course, but at the conclusion of the year.
Motion?
Move to approve the resignation of Amy.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, then we have a bunch of retirements.
It is that time of year. So we have some really great longstanding teachers in the district, including one of my wife's favorite teachers back in the day, in Ron Johnson. Mary Costello, 4K teacher who was hired in 2011, Anna Deerwalker, 3rd grade teacher hired in 1997. Ron Johnson, English teacher at Asa Clark, hired in 1988. And Jan Hassert, 6th grade teacher hired in 2002. All outstanding staff members going on to the next chapter. So I would take any questions and otherwise seek your approval of the retirement with great thanks to these 4 educators.
A lot of great talent, a lot of good experience going out the door there.
Yeah.
You want to take them all at once? Somebody want to make a motion to accept those retirements?
Sure. Move to accept the retirement of Mary Costello, Anna Derwachter, Ron Johnson, and Jan Hassert as presented.
Second.
All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Best wishes to all of them. So, no employments at this time?
No employments and no leaves.
Okay. That brings us down to the review of upcoming activities. We have Baldridge training coming up on the 24th and 25th. I'm going to be out of town, but is anybody who's planning on, like you need the training, Larry?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else planning on going?
Can you describe a little bit about it?
It's Baldridge criteria training. In fact, Larry's going to be helping a little bit
cool.
with the trainer that is coming in. He's worked with him before. There's education criteria specific to the Baldridge Excellence model, which is really what we use as the foundation for our continuous improvement practices. And so we make a commitment to making sure all administrators have training and get updated training on that criteria. So this is a couple of day training for that refresher. In the past, we used to actually train admins to be examiners, which is a little bit of a different level of that. But what we really came to, and I think it was a nice improvement, to be able to have just the criteria training, because in most cases, our leaders did not want to serve as examiners who would actually go in and look at applications and maybe even do visits, although some have done that in the past. Yeah, it's really training on that Baldridge education criteria.
I don't know, does Julie have access to like the PDF file of the education Baldridge criteria? I mean, it's worthwhile to at least have a copy of it, maybe flip through.
Yeah, we can share that with you so you can see what it looks like.
Okay.
I have that.
I think I could go.
Yeah. It would
We'd
be
glad to have you there, so.
Yeah.
So yeah, and Steve
That would be great.
Pleasington is the gentleman who is doing the training with us, right? Steve is a longtime member or a longtime person familiar with the Baldridge Award. He's a graduate of the UW Stout, but worked for IBM Rochester in Minnesota for a while up there, and then did different things. But I think the last 2-3 sessions that for the Wisconsin Forward Award training for examiners, he's done some of that. Or I think one time when at the American Family, because I know Brian and some other folks were there. Were you there that time too, or maybe not? In terms of, I mean, Brian Sniff and some other people from the Pewaukee School District were there as part of that training. And then last fall, in September, he did training for a team, one of our teams that we had out there. So, but yeah, it's if you get the training just on the criteria, much better than the examiner training. Examiner training is too intense.
That was a little much, maybe for some of us. Danielle's nodding. But Julie, could you reach out to Stacy with information again on the?
Oh, of
Okay,
course you are.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy.
And then the next meeting is February 28th. We have policy, and then the regular meeting. Policy is meeting, right, Jeannie?
Yes.
Okay. Then the 14th of March, but we had some comments about changing that date, right?
Yeah, and just to be clear, we just wanted to advise you that both Danielle and I will be absent. Certainly, John is more than capable of running the meeting. It was just to throw out an option if the board wanted to change. Again, I don't think it's something that you need to do, but if you wanted to change so that we could be in attendance, that was offered. I do know that the 28th, I know Stacy, I don't believe you can make it on the 28th, so sometimes that's what happens. You move the dates and you just create other issues, but that's why, again, not necessary to do it, but it was just offered as an option.
What's the wish of the board?
Can
Keep or move?
I can insert something in there, because I'm on the CISA Board of Control now too. And so we have a vacancy there for the director of the CISA. So all of a sudden, my world, I thought, oh, this is going to be easy transition, but they're looking for a replacement. So we have added probably a whole lot more meetings as if we were recruiting a new executive director there. So if we can keep it on the same dates, it will make my life easier if possible, but.
Steve?
I'm available either one.
Jeannie?
Either day works for me.
Either day works for me.
But I could not make the 28th.
So that's two people, so I guess we keep it the 14th, eh?
Yeah, sounds good.
Great.
I also had on my calendar, I held a learning session for March 7th.
Yeah, that was slated for what we had actually taken care of on December 6th.
Okay.
So that's already been handled.
Delete.
So you have some found time there. You can take that one off your calendar.
All right, and then we've got NSBA. We're going to probably talk about that a little more later. And then the 11th of April and then the 25th of April. And then we also had something about June, maybe changing those dates as well. Currently, they're the 13th and 27th of June.
Similar situation. Danielle and I will be at a conference out of town that last week of June. So if it's obviously that's a little ways out, so you'd have some time to think about it, but we could change dates so that we could be in attendance if that's what you would like, or certainly the meeting can be run by John. John's back is getting tired, but he's able to run the meeting.
Do you want to make a decision now or wait till you have a chance to review your calendars?
I'm available. I mean,
Either
the whole
one.
month is fine for me,
Yeah.
so I can do whatever.
Eric, what do you think?
I'm available as far as I know right now.
Same for me.
Yeah, same for me. Either date works.
I'm good on those dates, so I think we should.
So
Change
then,
'em.
which do you want their company or not?
Yeah, I would prefer to have them on.
Yeah.
I would prefer to move the dates so we could have our full administrative team available.
So we'll move it to the 6th and the 20th?
That's what it sounds like. Got that, Julie? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I think that's it for upcoming activities, unless somebody else has something that I don't know about. Okay. Then let's talk about the WASB convention. I know there was a number of us that all went, so I was the delegate at the assembly this time. And Larry got conscripted into what, counting votes or?
No, it was just the timekeeper and
Timekeeper.
watching people as they came up to the microphones to do a sequence and then help the chair lady run the meeting from that perspective, so.
Okay. And as history would, or tradition maybe, follows, they still had technical difficulties at the delegate meeting. So it took about an hour and a half longer than it probably needed to be because they had half of us in the room spread out, and then they had a portion of people that were virtual. And just right after every vote, we lost the feed to all the virtual people. And then we had to wait a bunch of time to get back on and start up again. So that was a bit on the frustrating side. So at least the little voting clickers that people had in the room actually worked this time. So that was nice. So, and there was really a smaller number of resolutions than I've seen in the past. There's only like 6 of them, maybe. I know there's been some years where they had up to like 25 or 30 of them, so that's why I volunteered. So, anything you want to add to that, Larry?
No.
So, I mean, there wasn't really any close votes on any of this stuff, so, but,
You know, I had something to say.
Yeah.
Because I shared this with you before. I don't know if the rest of the board looked through the resolutions, but I was deeply disappointed by one of the resolutions that was promoted and passed. It was a modification to a resolution that had passed in 2019. The existing language of the resolution was, in its resolution 2.37, said, it's titled Funding for Gifted and Talented Programming. And the original resolution was written, the WASB supports increasing state funding for gifted and talented programming in Wisconsin's public schools. And this year what was approved was an amendment to that resolution that added, the WASB encourages that schools focus less on identifying gifted students and more on identifying and addressing unmet learning needs of students capable of high levels of achievement. The WASB further encourages districts to promote a variety of advanced programming opportunities for K-12 students, including acceleration options, and to offer opportunities to individuals such as students from every background they're able to achieve at their highest possible levels. First of all, I have a number of concerns. First of all, the amendment doesn't make sense. The original language of the amendment of the resolution was all about funding for this was increasing funding for gifted and talented programming. I don't know what a statement that directs how districts should address gifted students has to do with a resolution that's targeted our state politicians related to how they fund gifted and talented education in our schools. So the audiences for the two pieces of this thing aren't cohesive at all. One's focused on political leaders and one's focused on school districts. So I don't think it's an appropriate place for that resolution amendment to have been added. Second, anyone who's taken time to read the WASB resolution manual will see there are nearly 100 specific resolutions regarding school finance. Many of those are targeted at getting additional state funding for specific educational initiatives in Wisconsin public schools. So why was this specific request dedicated for targeted modification? I don't understand why that was needed to be done. And then most troubling for me is the specific language used to focus less on and more on. Why does there need to be less of one to do more of another? If we take this to a different domain and see how such a language change would feel, try the same wording related to students in our RTI system. Would any of you defend telling Anthony Stranke that we should focus less on level 3 students? How would we tell Coach Burkhamper that he should focus less on his best varsity players and more on providing a variety of advanced basketball opportunities for all PHS students who wish to become varsity players someday? Doesn't make sense. You don't need to do less of something to do more of something else. So, neither of these alternative statements made any sense to me, so I can't support this and I must speak out. I found the amendment to be yet another attempt to divide groups within our schools by pitting one group against another, by clearly implying that what's limiting some group from opportunities is some other group who's getting special treatment. Again, I ask why one must focus less on gifted student identification to do more on identifying and addressing unmet learning needs of students capable at high levels of achievement. Apparently, I'm not alone in my concern here, as there was an amendment offered during the debate to strike the less than language. This floor amendment failed, and the original language passed. Is this the largest issue addressing or affecting our school district and our state? I don't think so. But I would ask our board not to support this divisive rhetoric and policy put forward by the WASB. We don't need to create winners and losers in the Pewaukee School District or in any Wisconsin school district. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you for sharing, Steve.
Thank you.
I can only give you my perspective on it, and to me, the way I interpreted it was that it was less about the haves, gifted and talented, and more about giving everybody opportunities. Kind of like we do with our RTI, or trying to have our, individual learning for each student, and that's the way I read it. And any money that helps us to give opportunities to the gamut of students, I saw as a positive. And that's the way I interpreted it. So, but thank you, Steve. Does anybody want to share any of the sessions they went to that they thought were particularly good?
Besides John's?
Well,
Yeah.
besides
Yeah.
John's.
John-
Yes,
John's
yes,
was the
thank you for
best.
that,
Yeah,
yeah.
John's was the best. I know that, I think it was Greendale, wasn't it, Jeannie?
Yes.
You've gone to that one on hiring.
Mhm.
I thought
I
that
was
was,
at that one
I
as well.
thought that was probably one of the best ones that I've been to.
I was just disappointed because a lot of them that I had zeroed in on wanting to do were canceled.
Yep.
Stacy, did you go down?
Mostly everything I went to was finance related.
Okay.
Really good.
Yes. And one of them, I actually knew what they were talking about.
The
That was
best
the
one
intro
ever,
one.
huh?
That was the intro one. Yeah.
Check that one off, right?
I'm making progress.
All right. Well, if nobody has anything more to contribute to that one, we can go down to talk about the NSBA conference and participation.
Yeah, I think Julie, I want to acknowledge Julie. I think she's done an amazing job keeping you all posted on this as you're trying to decide how you want to proceed with attendance at this convention. So I just want to thank Julie for that communication, so we can take any questions you have and just invite your discussion. We are looking for some direction from you as a group in terms of how you want to proceed. I think we're kind of getting time to make some decisions on whether or not you're going to attend, who's going to attend. We're planning to present. Do you want us to present? Do you not want us to present? Those are things that we're looking for direction on.
Well, I'll start off already by saying that I've arranged a business trip, so I'm going to be in San Diego anyways, and already have a hotel room, so I'm going. And if I need to do both presentations, I will.
And I normally would go. I mean, I'm a big advocate and supporter of us providing and sharing things that we do here in Pewaukee with our peers and colleagues around the country. On Saturday, I was asked by one of my work colleagues whether or not I would be able to cover for that individual for one of our computer system go-lives at our newest site location in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, because she has some personal things that she has to deal with. And so as a result, I will not be able to go this time around. So there will be no pressure on for drum circle in my absence, so I apologize for that. So, unless somebody wants to take that on as their personal mission for drum circles in San Diego.
Eric?
So this is a question for the board because I'm the new person here, right? But, I'm hoping you can give me some insight on this conference in particular and the value that you think it brings, because, when you look at the cost of this, if everybody was to go, meals, everything else, you're talking roughly $20,000 or more, with administrative people going as well. So, I'm hoping that you can give me some insight on that, because that's a lot of money. And I look at it and I say, what could 20+ thousand do for our students here in this district? So,
I just want to tag on to that too, that my understanding is it's not a fully normal conference. So, even if you have to take that into consideration too. I think that all of the sessions, like you guys said, like, at the WASB, the sessions that you really wanted to go to were canceled. And if that's the similar situation, I think that needs to be part of that discussion too, of, okay, in the past, maybe there was a lot of benefit derived, but we need to evaluate what is actually going to be happening this year.
yeah, and even going forward too, like, does it make sense to send 2 people from the board as representatives and they come back and share their experience? Or, there's an online option for $550 that people can, just because, part of what this board does is being good stewards of the district's money. So, again, you know, when I look at $20,000+, that's a lot of money. Are there more efficient ways to do it? Or, you know, you being on the board, having done this, do you say, no, it's absolutely, you know, go ahead. I mean, I'm just looking for input.
I'm the next newest member after Stacy, and I'd say my going the very first year was excellent for me. I learned a whole lot about the space of topics that different districts across the country are really interested in and are doing something about, and it helped to really broaden my thinking about what it means to be a board member. And it helped me a lot with building some relationships with other members of the administrative team, because in this room we only collaborate in one way. And I happen to know a few folks from when my kids were in school here, but it helped us have some social time together and get to know each other in a slightly different manner, which we don't have to do in San Diego. I mean, or in Philadelphia, where that happened to have been that year. It doesn't have to happen there, but it was a place that it could happen, and since we were all there, it did. And I thought that conference was really beneficial for me. Now, you know, then last year Chicago, and it just all fell apart, and so, you know, does it need to happen every year? I don't know, but I think it was valuable for me, especially that first year, to start really broadening my thinking about what the board.
You know, because when I was thinking about it, that's when I was like, well, would it make sense to board members go on a rotating basis, a couple of them, right? You know, and again, I don't know what I don't know, right? And so that's why I'm asking you guys, just because, again, you know, I'm looking at the dollars and cents of it, and it's a lot of dollars.
Well, the other thing too, Eric, in the past, there's been a lot more sessions, so honestly, we all went to different ones. You know, you didn't meet up with the same people, so there was more, it was a broader spectrum of what we learned there, but I have real concerns about that this year.
Well, and I think the other thing, I mean, clearly California is gonna be one of the more expensive places to travel to. I mean, the one was supposed to be in Chicago. I'm assuming Philadelphia was not as expensive. So as far as cost, it also is elevated this year because of that. So I feel like there's a couple different strikes against it this year, besides the issues that the concerns we have about NSBA, you know, with the cost and then the reduced sessions.
Well, certainly to your point, it made sense when it was fully sessioned out, you know. But the other thing is, one of the reasons we have gone is we are modeling our own professional development. We ask all of our staff members to continually develop themselves, to keep working, improving on their craft. They shouldn't be alone in that effort, and this is part of our professional development. So that's one of the reasons why I think it's important to go, because I get something out of it all the time. Not every session, but I always get something out of it, and we always seem to bring something home we're willing to try. Whether it be the spotlight on learning that we do, student representatives.
Board representatives.
So there's always some ideas that we're bringing back, and because of there's so many sessions, you don't know when somebody's going to have that opportunity to have something that's very important. So besides the modeling and the stuff bringing back, I just think it's a good thing for us to model that behavior we're asking all of our staff to do. So.
And those are things that can't be accomplished through the WASB conference, you know.
It's a different level.
Yeah, it's definitely a different level.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's national and state, but.
The quality, I don't mean to besmirch Wisconsin, but the quality is much higher in that. And there's also networking opportunities, and we had a great session with the Eustis.
Yeah, in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah,
We did a little
I
bit of
always
sharing
screw up their
there,
name,
so.
but yeah, so we've had some good opportunities to work with other school districts and see how they're doing, and usually the high-performing ones. And it's also good to, I would have to call it an ego thing once in a while, because you'll get to sit at lunch with some other board members and hear about their problems, and you're going, oh, God, I'm glad I'm not there. So it does help you feel like we're on the right path when you do talk to some of these folks about what's going on in their districts. So. Larry, I'm sorry if I interrupted you.
No, just another comment though, Eric, because I think when I first got on the board back in 2002, I mean, it was not the practice that the Pewaukee School District would send all of the board members, but maybe it was within the, not a couple of years ago, but after that.
It's
I mean,
been
and again-
quite a long time.
Yeah, but it wasn't, I mean, like
Wasn't-
2010, I think since we were in San Diego and some other places. Again, Chicago made it really easy to go. A few of us went to Nashville and places like that, Orlando.
Yep.
So, I mean, when it was convenient and allowable, and maybe was it San Antonio? I mean, some of the places where we had an opportunity to attend, but it wasn't always the longstanding practice. So, I mean, it was just something that evolved over time, whereas those of us who were able to attend were able to come back and basically share some of those things where it was, the value added was indeed there in terms of stuff, plus our ability to have, you know, sort of like those, sharing our story with others around the country, which was always very helpful in terms of stuff. So I think it's not something it's not like we've, what do you call it? Carved in concrete, if you will, or going forward with it, but it's just something that, yeah, you're raising a very, very legitimate question about what value do we get out of this, and I think the last couple of years, and this year probably in particular, it's gonna be a little bit more questionable in terms of whether or not we're gonna see the same value with it. Doesn't mean we can't go back into it, and I don't remember exactly where it is in 2023, but somewhere in there, it's gonna be out there. So I think we have to reevaluate this every year, that's the way I would look at it, once we see the program. Actually, this time around, Julie will probably tell you, the programming that they normally would put together, all of that stuff would be totally lined up, probably in December already. Keynote speakers, presentations, dates, times, schedules, all of those things would have been out there. And it looks like they just got some of the stuff actually posted within the last week or two, I think, so.
And to Steve's point too, we used to try to bring a different administrator along every year too, just so we have that time to break bread together and go out to dinner and have that social connection with people we don't normally would have that opportunity to do that connection with, so.
Okay, well, I appreciate the perspective.
But that doesn't answer the question.
Well, so you said you're going, and anyone, well, I mean, if we're gonna present, I mean, I think,
Brian, not to be gauche, but if it's a business trip, then is your company paying for your flight and that?
I'm gonna get my flight paid for. I'm gonna
Okay.
have to have the hotel a couple days,
That's
so.
helpful, though.
But, yeah.
No, okay, all right.
Yeah,
I've already made the decision not to go, you know, for a number of reasons. It's close to the election. I was basically going back to WASB with the cancellations and with NSBA not having their stuff together. I questioned it, so I pulled the plug. I think it was about a month ago, I think I talked to you, Julie. So I've already made the decision not to go.
I was kind of conflicted because, like I said, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot there, and then I've got some other things happening at home, so I think I'm going to pass this year. But what I would like to do, though, is the online ones. So even though I'm not there in person to see all of them, I'd still like to do the online.
I think I'll go. I think we need to have a presence there. I think it's probably a good balance, given this year that we don't all participate because it's going to be a smaller event. So I think I'll go because I think we need a couple of people there for sure.
and if it wasn't that reduced number of sessions, you probably have less of a concern, right?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
That, I wouldn't be concerned at all if it wasn't for the smaller size of the event at all. I think my experience of going is that it's well worth going. I think this year I had two concerns, but I think given that we have a number of members who aren't gonna go, I think I probably will then.
Stacy, your interest?
I'm available to go. I kind of just feel like Eric, like I just don't know, is it worth it? I mean,
Yeah,
It's a tough decision to make.
And I'm not gonna go, because, you know, again, there's the cost of it, one, the value of it, two, there's all those other boards across the country that have pulled out of the NSAB anyway. So not only are the sessions gonna be reduced, but, you know, the networking, that's gonna be reduced because there's not gonna be as many school boards showing up there.
It's definitely not a normal year, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So one,
Stacy, if
two.
you're available, though, I think never having been, you would find it educational.
Oh,
I agree. I agree.
I'll set the bar low, keep it low.
But, I mean, actually, they have like little session descriptions posted on the NSBA website for the conference, so we can take a look at some of those that are out there. Oh, and actually, that was one other comment I wanted to make relative to the presentation on the insight mentoring. So while I can't go, I still would want to help participate in that, so if you saw that already. so-
Yeah, Julie sent a note to Adriana and I, so we can connect with you on
Okay.
that.
All right, so we're going, you, me, possibly, and then,
Danielle's going, Adriana is going because they're part of presentations.
Robin?
I am, and Robin is going. And as I had mentioned before, I may have a conflict. So,
wrestling related?
yeah, my son has nationals, national competition, but he also has a little bit of an injury he's dealing with. So if he's not going to be able to compete, then I would go.
Okay. Did you get that, Julie? Okay. All right, thank you for the discussion.
I hope next year is a back in full kind of year or something where it's something we can all share together.
I think one of the things I'm going to miss the most is the, kind of the socializing we did afterward, because
That's
it
right.
really gave us a chance to get to know each other well. You know, and for those people who are out there listening, we do not discuss any board things when we socialize.
Yeah, and the 24 is in Indianapolis, and I should go to 23, right? So-
Orlando.
23.
I did notice
yes.
that nobody mentioned missing the drum circle.
I think it was a ukulele circle or
It's a
something,
ukulele- oh,
wasn't
yeah.
it transitioning to?
Yeah, they might be, Sorry, Larry. Okay, let's move on to the legislative advocacy update. There's been a lot of going on here, so they've kind of released a education agenda, if you will. And there's a whole bunch of items on there. Posting signs that indicate who to call for child abuse or neglect. You got bills that talk about homeowners being able to change their school boundary, and only one school district, not both school districts, get to make the acceptance or disapproval of that. There's some for the sunset dates on the higher education boards. So a whole bunch of different things are going on there. And right now it's pretty much open. So these are just been announced, and I don't think that we know exactly what's going to happen. So it's just kind of like ramping up at this point. So you get anything to add?
Yeah, there's kind of a small flood of bills that have been pushed forward in just the last couple weeks, ranging from, there's a bill calling for dividing up MPS to the bill that you did mention, one of them that is something I think we should so anyway, there's a whole kind of gamut of things. Some of this is politics, certainly as well, with the election that's coming up. The one that you mentioned regarding the detachment from school districts is one we're going to want to pay some attention to. That evokes thoughts of all kinds of issues that could be really concerning in terms of that process being something where you would have subdivisions just theoretically at the whimsy of whoever's living there at the time. We're in your district, we're out of your district, we're in your district. We would, it would really restrain the ability of school boards to have a role in that process. Currently, right now, it's very difficult for, we had Meadowbrook Farms, a number of citizens from Meadowbrook Farms that wanted to detach from Waukesha and come into Pewaukee, for example. I don't know, that was probably 15, 20 years ago now. And it didn't happen because Waukesha wouldn't approve it, which you would understand because they lose all that tax base. So it's concerning in terms of the impact it could have on, how do you manage a budget if people are seceding and coming in, and with that kind of fluidity, I think there's just some things we're going to want to pay attention to and really understand what's being suggested.
And it didn't, the way I read it, you didn't even have to be contiguous to that district. It could have been like in the middle of your school district, somebody could
Really?
opt out.
Wow.
So that would really just make things really hard to manage.
There's the impact of some of those things is something we want to pay attention to and understand what the impact would be. So that would be an example of one that we're going to want to pay attention to, and I think had done a nice job, especially with Representative Nalen, of having really good lines of communication. So I think as this kind of progresses, we will reach out to him again, just to kind of talk about where things are at and give our opinions and try to be a resource. What would this mean? But the other piece is that the legislative session is going to be done soon. In the next few weeks, the session will be. So I don't expect a whole lot more coming through, but it is kind of interesting, the volume of things that have been pushed forward in the last few weeks.
Yeah, the good news is people care about our education system and wanting to make it better. I think it's always under there somewhere.
Right. No argument there. We just have to make sure we're paying attention, so we would understand the impact, so we can advocate for what we think is best for the Pewaukee School District.
And there's a couple ones that seem to come up all the time, like expanding the choice program and more accountability reporting and stuff like that. And,
there's some pieces on the state report card, especially related to the growth aspect of the report card. Certainly, voucher expansion and those things are a big topic as well.
Okay. Anybody else want to add to that? John, you got anything to?
No, just keeping track of several of those that are out there again, where we need to learn more about where they're headed, and then we'll engage with our legislators on the way.
Okay. Well, then let's go down to setting the meeting date for the annual meeting, annual meeting date. So we've got a couple dates on there. I know you don't need to have me there, but I think the 1st through the 15th might be iffy for me, so if you can push it later would improve my attendance possibility there. Anybody want to have a date they want to propose?
But you're saying which dates are not available, or you're not available?
I might have trouble making it to the 1st, 8th, and possibly the 15th.
Is it because those are Mondays, or just because all of those days in that period of time?
Yeah, there's a big trip being planned for vacation, and not sure if it's going to be 6 or 10 days in the Boundary Waters.
Got it.
So, and exactly when we're going to start. So.
Yeah, to Steve's point, it doesn't have to be on a Monday.
Right, that's kind of what I was alluding to, is it doesn't have to be a Monday. I think one of the things that many count on is a little bit of time for families to take vacation. So I'm just a little sensitive to that in August as well, to make sure that people with small children, which are really only 2 people left on the board anymore, I don't want to feel like they can't take some August time off. So.
Grandkids.
Oh, yeah, well, there's grandkids involved too. I'm not in that boat anymore, so I'm one of the most flexible people as it relates to all of that. But
What was it last year? Was it the?
It was the 9th.
Yeah, it was
earlier.
John and I did talk about this as background today. I mean, these dates would all provide adequate time for John's team to be prepared. So that's not an issue.
Eric?
Yeah, I would advocate for the week of the 22nd. And only because around the end of August, or maybe right after Labor Day, I'm going to have some training for work that I'm going to have to be at. I'll be in Atlanta, so that 29th date, I don't know. All the other ones, I'm good with.
Everybody good with the 22nd?
Or at least that week, if people don't want it on a Monday. It doesn't matter.
That week is fine for me.
Ann?
That's fine.
That's fine with me.
22nd works?
All right. Well, then,
Do we want it on a Monday? Have we historically kept it on a Monday?
It's historically been on a Monday.
Yeah.
It has,
6
just
years
because
now.
it's been our
That's fine,
practice to
then.
have
Makes
meetings
sense.
on Mondays,
Maybe
but
we'll
it
expect
doesn't
it.
have to be.
Do we need a motion for that?
Yes.
I think we do need a motion. I'll
Yeah.
make
We need
a
a-
motion to set the annual meeting date of Monday, August 22nd.
Second.
All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. And then
Do we start that one earlier?
Yeah, it starts at
Yes.
6.
6 usually.
There's 3 meetings
No.
in rapid succession.
Yeah, usually 3. Next item on the agenda is comments from citizens. Julie, did you get any more cards or any cards? All right. Then we come down to the last item. Motion for adjournment, please.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.